Sniping's a good job, mate. It's challenging work, out of doors. I guarantee you'll not go hungry, because at the end of the day, long as there's 2 people left on the planet, someone is going to want someone dead. Professionals have standards. Be polite. Be efficient. Have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight. Specifically about everyone's favourite deputy, the fastest spear gun in the West, Caleb Quinn, better known as the Deathslinger. We'll be unpacking his subversion of the common Wild West tropes, what sets his origin story apart from the other killers in the roster, and just how relevant the issues surrounding that story are to the modern day. A killer with a gun has been somewhat of a meme in the community for almost as long as Dead by Daylight has existed, with FPS fans since time immemorial trying to figure out how their favourite pistol, rifle or shotgun could be balanced into the game.
I don't think I've ever looked in this drawer. Wow, a gun!
While the Huntress and the Plague both fulfill the ranged killer fantasy in different ways, any dreams of an actual rooty-tooty point-and-shooty honest-to-goodness gun were still just that, dreams. On the 10th of March 2020, Behaviour made those dreams a reality and released the Deathslinger as part of Chapter 15, Chains of Hate, which also brought us the tenacious documentarian and part-time penguin Zarina Kassir as a survivor, as well as Caleb's home map, Dead Dog Saloon. Don't make fun of me for saying it like that, by the way. Behaviour literally misspelled the name of the map, so you cannot say it any other way. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. I don't make the rules. On the surface, Caleb Quinn looks fairly straightforward. A darker take on the archetypical cowboy look that fits with Dead by Daylight's grimy and blood-splattered aesthetic. He's not some noble rogue or rugged hero like the Clint Eastwoods of Western cinema, because that wouldn't fit well into Dead by Daylight. Instead, Behaviour reimagined their own nightmarish new image of their Wild West that doesn't gloss over the more unsavoury parts of that time period. When you think of how a cowboy might catch you with his power, you might think he'd grab you in a lasso and pull you in, or maybe he'd point his shiny revolver at you and tell you to reach for the sky. But not the Deathslinger. Oh no. Why pull you in with a lasso like some John Wayne knockoff, when he could shoot you in the guts with a harpoon gun and haul you over to him like a fish floundering helplessly on the end of a line? That's such an interesting twist on the archetypical Wild West frontiersman, and it doesn't stop there. Caleb's not some spotless Hollywood actor straight off the makeup chair. He's got a cheek mangled by a bullet, a broken jaw, and a leg brace to stop himself walking with a limp. His body bears the toll of a brutal and violent life he led as a bounty hunter on the frontier. But the damage his life did to him is far more than skin deep. The cowboy is such a powerfully American image, much like the cheeseburger, healthcare poverty, and Guy Fieri. So, what did Behaviour do to this indelible image of American history? They made him a second-generation Irish immigrant in the 19th century United States. Poor guy. Large numbers of Irish emigrants fled their homes during the Irish potato famine, which began in 1845, and they were treated with extreme hostility in both mainland Britain and the United States. According to Zarina's law, Caleb was sentenced to 15 years in Hellshire Penitentiary for assault in 1860, which would put his attack on Henry Bayshore and the Hellshire prison warden in 1875 at the latest. Since Caleb is definitely well over 30 in 1875, this puts his year of birth before the start of the Great Famine, since his parents had already relocated stateside before Caleb was born. This leaves the question of why Caleb's parents emigrated very much up in the air. Maybe we'll learn more about them in a future Deathslinger Tome story. But for now, all we know is that once Caleb's family settled in the Midwest, they were not treated well. This was a time where the Irish were stereotyped as lazy, savage, uncivilized subhumans, in large part due to the dominance of Catholicism that still reigns in Ireland to this day. The Great Potato Famine which halved Ireland's population in 7 years, was largely down to a fungus that infected the island's staple crop. But the human cost of that famine was exacerbated by neglect and scorn from the English at the time, who exported convoys of wheat, oats and barley to England under armed guard, while the Irish starved in their millions. The attitude of the English to this disaster was expressed most clearly by Charles E. Trevelyan, the English civil servant in charge of the relief efforts in 1849. Great Britain cannot continue to throw her hard-won millions into the bottomless pit of Celtic pauperism. The judgment of God sent that calamity to teach the Irish a lesson. That calamity must not be too much mitigated. And this attitude carried over to the United States, where an estimated 2 million Irish citizens fled to escape the destitution of their homeland. From the day of Caleb's birth, he was always going to be disregarded by the society he was born into. This is the core recurring idea of his story. He had all the drive and all the genius to get wherever he wanted in a just world where he could have been given a chance to shine, but he was held down by social restraints too immense for him to fully overcome. This is where Caleb's story sets itself apart from that of the other killers. While most killers are defined by some personal connection that caused them to become the way they are, Caleb's issues are mostly, well, nothing personal. While he has people in his life that he hates and fights to destroy, most notably the railroad tycoon Henry Bayshore, his problems wouldn't actually be solved by destroying them, because the system that allows people like that to exist is still intact. Let's start at the beginning, for an example of what I mean. On the edge of the frontier, sickness, famine, and death were common sights, and pioneers contended for whatever scraps they could, while tycoons feasted. This harsh world where those with power and capital brutally exploit those without it pre-exists Caleb's birth. It's just the hand he's been dealt in life. There's nothing he could have done to prevent it. It sets the perfect establishing atmosphere for the story to come, and it never lets up once. Caleb is established from a young age to not take this hostile world lying down, to use his wits and thick skin to give as good as he gets. As soon as he picks up his mechanical engineering skills from his father, he turns his attention to torturing his childhood bullies with instruments that make John Kramer sit up and take notes. He's angry and vicious and cruel, but in a society that's built from the ground up to be cruel to him, you kinda can't blame him for turning out the way he did. After spending his youth in the Whiterun Skyforge, getting himself to Smithing 100, he eventually managed to find some sort of way in the world, working for Henry Bayshore's burgeoning railroad empire. He built a railroad spike gun to stamp them into the ground, as well as a steam drill and other inventions. In a fair world, he'd have been adequately rewarded, even celebrated for what he'd built. But not here, not now. Just as his childhood bullies didn't see Caleb as anything more than just a poor little Irish boy. Henry Bayshore saw Caleb as nothing more than a cash cow, prime for milking, as he stole and sold the patents for Caleb's inventions. It wasn't anything personal. Bayshore didn't have a grudge against him for all we know. It's just the way the business was conducted, and Caleb wasn't taking it lying down. He broke into Bayshore's office and pinned his boss to his desk with a railroad spike through his guts, nearly killing him. I don't know about you, but I completely understood why Caleb did that. As soon as he's able to overcome the barrier of being Irish and a society that wants to ostracize him, another barrier to his success is put up. He's not a rich and powerful man in a society that only serves men who are rich and powerful, men like Henry Bayshore. His real enemy is not Bayshore himself, but the society that allows him to wield the power he does, and that keeps putting obstacles in Caleb's way. And that society does not take kindly to some upstart Irishman without a penny to his name attacking one of their own. Caleb was sentenced to 15 years in the subtly named Hellshire Penitentiary, which in this world was the first private prison in the United States. In reality, that was the San Quentin prison, built in 1852. At any rate, he served an indeterminate amount of his sentence before befriending the warden at the prison, with whom he developed an agreement. Caleb would be given extra meals and privileges in exchange for building torture devices for the sadistic warden's use on other prisoners. This marks the start of a dynamic shift for Caleb, when he started to get a taste of power in this twisted hierarchy. For once, he was elevated above the common masses, for building instruments of violence to be selfishly used against them. In a way, just as Bayshore used Caleb as a means to elevate his own fortunes, Caleb used the other prisoners who are victims of the torture devices to elevate his own fortunes. He's reaping the benefits of this dog-eat-dog society and extracting social capital from the warden's victims. After a time, the warden made an agreement with him. If Caleb brought in wanted outlaws to stock Hellshire's cells, the warden would commute his sentence and even arrange for Bayshore's eventual arrest and imprisonment. Caleb accepts this bargain, and here's where I think he makes his biggest mistake. Securing Bayshore's imprisonment right now does nothing for Caleb at all. His agreement with the warden to see Bayshore locked up in exchange for his services as a bounty hunter is motivated purely out of a desire for vengeance. Caleb is so fixated on revenge against Bayshore that he seems to lose sight of the world he's living in. Just because Bayshore will be imprisoned doesn't mean he'll be free. Her exploitment and mistreatment from those more powerful than him. Caleb seems to act under the impression that his issues are personally linked to Bayshore, and that by removing Bayshore from the equation his issues will be alleviated. Instead, it resulted only in Caleb opening himself up to be exploited by the same system that treats people like tools to be used over and over again. The warden arranged for the release of several Irish prisoners to form the Hellshire Gang under Caleb's command, which led to 6 years of Caleb, armed with his new specialised varmint-catching spear gun, the Redeemer, roaming the Midwest and handing wanted men over to the Hellshire prison warden. In essence, Caleb was buying his own freedom with the lives of others, which in a way makes him no different from Bayshore, who is buying his own success by spending Caleb's livelihood. This is Caleb at his most successful because he's playing into the system. He's part of the dog-eat-dog capitalist society now, so he reaps its benefits. But there's always a bigger fish, and Caleb's 6 years at the head of the Hellshire Gang came to an end when he figured that out the hard way. He learned that the warden of Hellshire Prison was making a deal with none other than Henry Bayshore to buy out the prison behind his back, and Caleb was less than pleased. The warden who had offered him a way out from under the boot of oppression turned out to be just another backstabber, who was using Caleb for profit with no intention of sharing the spoils of success or paying up his end of the bargain. Just like Bayshore, just like Caleb. He led the Hellshire Gang back to the prison and brutalised Henry Bayshore and the warden, before throwing them to the prisoners to tear the pair limb from limb. This should be the end of the story. The villainous Bayshore and the treacherous warden were defeated. The day should be won, and Caleb should live happily ever after. And in many ways, it is the end of the story. But remember, in a society like this, Bayshore's just one man. And it's at that moment that I think Caleb realises that he's never going to truly be free. He doesn't stand around to watch Bayshore's eyes close for the last time. He doesn't deal the killing blow. Instead, he just goes back to the only place that ever seemed to suit him in this cruel reality, his dusty old cell. This supposed day of triumph is actually Caleb's lowest point. Sure, the warden and Bayshore are gone now, but what happens then? This isn't some spaghetti western, where he rides off into the sunset with the Hellshire Gang in tow. He lashed out at Bayshore before, and was almost executed for it. We have no reason to believe that that wouldn't happen again. Killing Bayshore and the warden ultimately accomplished nothing, because Caleb was as much a prisoner now as he ever was before. Society will always hate him for who he is, an Irishman with no wealth, no power, and no privilege. His place in this cruel capitalist world is to be at the bottom of it, a pioneer contending for whatever scraps he could claim while tycoons feast. He's not content with the position assigned to him, so he finds himself beaten down, double-crossed, and left out in the cold, time and time again. And that's where the difference between him and the other killers comes into play. The Deathslinger is not a product of an individual relationship gone sour, but instead a man left behind by a predatory system where financial or political profit is placed above the lives and well-being of the common man. Everyone Caleb sees on his dusty road to vengeance, his childhood bullies, the wealthy executives who turned him away, the warden, Henry Bayshore. These are the kind of people born by a world like that. Society made Caleb Quinn the cold, cruel and vengeful man he is today. And returning to his cell, once Bayshore and the warden were dealt with, is his ultimate resignation to that status quo. Until the entity offers him a way out. Life as a killer in the fog is much simpler than life in the 19th century capitalist hellscape of the Midwest. To Caleb, it's a dusty path to vengeance, stained with the blood of those who've done him wrong. No corrupt justice system, no recourse, no political capital to buy them a way out this time. Just the cold steel of the hooks, and the cold heart of men willing to do what must be done. No wonder Caleb took the chance to go to another world and live a new life. Goodness knows his old one was barely worth living at all. The story of the Deathslinger is a cautionary tale of what men will do when driven to desperation and rage. If you abuse a dog, treat it like dirt for its whole life, starve it and torment it for your own sick gratification, you cannot be surprised when it bites back. That was the lesson learned by Henry Bayshore and the prison warden, but again, killing them was ultimately inconsequential. Even though Caleb left the harsh society that mistreated him behind, it kept going without him. What do you think happened to Caleb's fellow gang members? To the prisoners who killed Bayshore and the warden? Even Caleb's parents and his Irish countrymen? How many more people suffered under the boots of our barbaric elite class of corporate oligarchs and corrupt politicians? Trick question. It's still happening. We live in an age of economic and political inequality not seen since the Great Depression. The rise of anti-establishment politics across the world is indicative of a wider social unrest among the ordinary person, a dissatisfaction with a political system that doesn't work for them. Young people are growing up poorer than their parents for the first time in modern history. Retirement ages across the world are skyrocketing, birth rates are nosediving, because people just can't afford to have kids anymore. More and more, those with power, wealth and influence are able to consolidate their lives of luxury while turning the workers whose blood, sweat and tears keeps their empires afloat against each other, often with tragic consequences. The story of Caleb Quinn is a warning, telling us to build a fairer and better world, which doesn't create people like that, where the average person does not live in fear of being exploited for your labour and left in the dirt once you've been drained of your material value. It's a warning to remind us to care about others and try to understand them, lest we find ourselves at their mercy someday. And we would all do well to listen. Okay, that got really real very quickly. So, in conclusion, Irish Cowboy.
I was born on a Dublin street where the loyal drums did beat. The loving English feet they walked all over us. And every single night when me da would come home tight, he'd invite the neighbours out with this chorus. Come out, shake a leg and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Hellshire. Come tell us how you slew them all Arabs 2 by 2. Like the Zulus they had spears, a bow and arrows. Oh bravely you faced one with your 16-pounder gun, and you frightened them damn natives to the marrow. Come out, shake like and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Hellshire. Come out, shake like and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Hellshire. Run.